The plane soared peacefully through a sea of golden clouds, cruising steady at 30,000 feet. Passengers sipped coffee, babies slept, and sunlight painted the cabin in a warm glow. It was Flight 267, New York to London, packed with 312 souls. In seat 14A sat Emma, an 11-year-old girl with curious blue eyes, clutching a worn-out teddy bear she called Captain Sky. She was traveling alone, her first international flight, to reunite with her mother in London after 2 long years. She had spent the morning sketching planes in her notebook. Fascinated by everything that flew, her late father had been a pilot, and every time she saw a cockpit door, she imagined him smiling from inside. But this time, something about the flight felt too quiet. Then it happened. A faint thud, then another. The plane jolted, once, then twice. People gasped. The seatbelt lights flickered. Emma looked around, heart pounding. The cabin crew rushed toward the cockpit, but seconds later the intercom crackled and fell silent. No announcement. No captain's calm voice. Nothing. The silence stretched too long. A flight attendant named Sarah, face pale, tried to mask her panic as she hurriedly knocked on the cockpit door. No response. She keyed the emergency code, but the door didn't open. The passengers began to whisper, panic rising like a wave. "Are we in trouble?" Someone shouted. "Why aren't we hearing from the pilots?" Another cried. And in the middle of it all sat Emma, clutching her teddy, eyes fixed on the cockpit door. Something deep inside her, something that felt like her father's voice, whispered, "Don't be afraid." Then the oxygen masks dropped. The cabin erupted in screams. Through the chaos, Sarah ran toward the back, grabbing the emergency intercom. "The pilots are unresponsive," she cried to her crew. "We have no contact." Emma's small heart thundered in her chest. She remembered her father's stories, how pilots practiced emergency drills, how autopilot could fail, how planes could be guided if someone just followed the system correctly. When Sarah stumbled near her row, Emma looked up with trembling courage and said, "I think I can help." Sarah blinked, speechless. "You're just a child." Emma's eyes shone with something fierce, a mix of innocence and destiny. "My dad was a pilot. He taught me what to do. If something ever happened, at 30,000 feet, surrounded by fear, an 11-year-old girl made a decision no one expected. The silence wasn't going to last much longer. The door to the cockpit loomed like a wall between life and death. Sarah stared at Emma, torn between disbelief and desperation. The co-pilot and captain weren't answering, and ground control wasn't responding either. The plane's systems flickered in warning lights no one on board understood. "Please," Emma pleaded. "If you open that door, I can try." Sarah hesitated, then remembered the hundreds of lives behind her, the terrified passengers, the crying children. She whispered a prayer and keyed in the override. The door opened with a soft hiss. Inside, chaos. Both pilots were slumped over the controls, oxygen masks hanging uselessly. The autopilot alarm blared. The yoke trembled under turbulence. Emma froze for a second, her father's training flashing in her mind. Engine check, altitude, control, radio. She slid into the co-pilot seat, barely tall enough to see over the console. Her fingers trembled, but found the switches she remembered from flight simulators her dad built for her. "Okay, Daddy," she whispered. "Help me do this." Sarah grabbed the intercom. "Everyone remain calm. We have someone working on the problem." The plane continued to shake. The passengers prayed, unaware that their fate now rested in the hands of a child. Emma steadied herself. She pressed the transmit button on the radio. "This is Flight 267. Pilot unresponsive." "This is—" Emma Hayes, age 11. "Requesting help," static answered. Then a voice, distorted but real, came through. "Flight 267, this is air traffic control." "Did you say 11? "Yes, sir," she said, her voice breaking. "My dad was a pilot. I need to keep the plane steady." Silence. Then, "Okay, Emma, we're going to help you. Just breathe. You're doing great." The ground operator began guiding her step by step. Emma adjusted the throttle, stabilized altitude, and re-engaged partial autopilot. The plane leveled slightly. People clapped in relief, not yet knowing who was saving them. But deep inside, Emma knew they weren't safe yet. because something was still wrong with the pressure system. And a storm front was moving in fast. The calm before the next nightmare was about to break. Lightning cracked through the sky. The plane trembled violently as Emma gripped the controls. Air traffic control's voice faded into static. She was alone again. Sarah held her shoulder. "You're doing amazing, sweetie. Just hold it steady." Emma's mind was sharp now, her small hands moving like instinct. Her father's lessons echoed. Trust the instruments, not your fear. Rain lashed against the windshield. The navigation screen blinked red. Autopilot failure. The aircraft nosed slightly downwards. Alarms screamed. Emma bit her lip, forcing her trembling hands to act. "Manual control engaged," she whispered. "We're flying this by hand." Down in the cabin, people screamed prayers, clutching loved ones. A man shouted, "We're going down!" But the girl in the cockpit refused to believe that. "I won't let that happen," she said softly. For the next 11 minutes, Emma did the impossible, fighting crosswinds, lightning, and sheer panic to keep the jet level. She followed faint instructions through bursts of static, recalibrated altitude, and guided the plane toward the open patch of sky. Every decision she made wasn't out of skill, it was out of heart. And somehow, miraculously, the storm began to clear. Then, through the windshield, runway lights appeared. London Control had diverted a nearby airfield for emergency landing. Fire trucks lined the runway. "Emma," came the voice again, clear this time. "You've got visual. Can you descend manually?" "I think so," she whispered. "I have to try." Her hands shook as she began descent. The descent was brutal. Every muscle in Emma's arms burned as she pulled the yoke. The plane shook like it wanted to give up. But she didn't. "Flaps at 30, she murmured. "Gear down." The runway drew closer, the lights growing bigger and brighter until they filled the glass. Sarah held her breath. The passengers braced. Emma's teddy bear slid off the dashboard and landed beside her, as if her father's spirit was right there, watching. "Come on, Dad," she whispered. "Let's land this together," the wheels screeched. A violent jolt, then another, and suddenly, silence. The plane slowed, then stopped. Tears filled her eyes. She'd done it. Hundreds of lives saved by an 11-year-old girl who refused to be afraid. As the emergency teams rushed in, they found her sitting quietly in the cockpit, hands still on the controls, whispering to the empty co-pilot's seat, "Did I do good, Daddy?" The world found out hours later. News channels called her the Sky Angel. Airlines around the world honored her bravery. But for Emma, it wasn't about fame. It was about keeping a promise she made long ago to the man who taught her never to give up. And that's how, at 30,000 feet, a little girl turned silence into a miracle.